Hello, seventh graders. Before I start this video, I just want to take some time and brag about some of you guys. Some of you guys are doing an excellent job completing your assignments, emailing me when you have questions, and just putting in some good effort with your work. So good job. I'm very proud of some of you guys. But I cannot keep bragging about you guys because we have to get started on today's topic, which is the Compromise of 1850. So before we start, I need to make sure you understand the Missouri Compromise. The Missouri Compromise is going to be created by Henry Clay. Missouri is going to join the Union as a slave state. Maine is going to join the Union as a free state. Congress is then going to draw an imaginary line that is going to separate this debate in the future. Whenever this conversation comes up on if a territory will become a slave or free state, they're just going to say, hey, look at the line. Everything above this line is a free state. Everything below this line is a slave state, except for Missouri. Once again, this imaginary line determines if a territory in the future will be free or slave. The only place that is allowed to be a slave state above this line is Missouri. I went ahead and drew that here. Someone had a really good question the other day. They said, Mr. Why didn't they just go ahead and create states in the rest of this whole territory? Before an area can become a state, it needs to have a certain amount of people living in the area. It needs to have a population requirement. Missouri is the only area that meets that requirement when they created this compromise. So Congress is very happy at the time because they can say, hey, look, we're able to maintain the balance. That's why they're agreeing to this balancing act of trying to keep Congress even between the number of slaves and free states. They're able to achieve that. Okay, so they're able to look at this. They have the same amount of free states and slave states. We did a good job. We don't have to worry about this in the future because we have that imaginary line. We don't even have to debate this. In the future, we're just going to say, hey, look at the line. Meanwhile, what's going on in the United States is the gag rule. Abolitionists flood Congress with anti-slavery petitions. Congress doesn't want to deal with this dangerous topic. Remember, half of the country is a slave state. Half of the country is a free state. If they rule on the issue of slavery, they are going to be upsetting half of the country. So Congress thinks it's best if they just ignore and don't let people talk about this in Congress. So in a way, they take duct tape and they put it over senators' mouths who want to talk about slavery. This is something that Congress does not want to hear about right now. However, in the South, Southerners are scared because these ideas are spreading to the South. So abolitionists are going to continue to attack slavery in books, newspapers, and public meetings. Remember, the gag rule only applied to Congress. It did not apply to everyone else in the United States. Turner is going to lead a slave rebellion, and it's going to terrify the South. Southern states are going to adopt strict laws to control slaves. Southerners also want to keep abolitionist writing from reaching their slaves. Some Southern states started to arrest people spreading abolitionist ideas. Remember, we had Turner's Rebellion, where we saw about 60 to 70 white Southerners killed by a slave uprising. So what the South wants to stop is abolitionist ideas spreading to their slaves in the South. Now, what we also see in the South, we have this issue with fugitive slaves. Fugitive is a vocab word for this unit, a person who flees or tries to escape. Slaves continued to rebel by running away to freedom in the North. Slaveholders saw a slave as a valuable piece of property. They wanted Congress to pass a law to help them recapture their property. They also did not want Northerners helping their property escape. Okay, so we discussed this in class, how expensive slaves were and how slaves would run away and escape. So what you actually had happening in the North were Northerners helping slaves avoid being recaptured. And this is something that is difficult. So if you live in Georgia, imagine trying to recapture your property that's in New York, especially when they're warning the slave, the fugitive slave, hey, there's a slave catcher coming tonight. Be ready, be prepared. Okay, in a way, the Southerners want the government to help them. And the government's just kind of like, oh, well, what do you want me to do? So now let's focus on the territory we gained from Mexico. For 3 years, Congress debated on what to do with the territory they gained from the Mexican-American War. Southerners want all the Mexican cession opened for slavery. Northerners wanted all of it closed. Southerners proposed a bill that would extend the Missouri Compromise line. The Northerners are going to reject this bill. So if we come back here at our map, we have the Missouri Compromise line. What the Southerners propose is, hey, why don't we just take this line and extend it? Boom, debate solved, no issue. But the North doesn't want that because the North wants to see slavery ending. Now, if we look back at our scale, okay, California wants to join the Union as a free state. This is going to upset the balance once again. Remember, they want to keep everything equally balanced. Okay, Southerners reject California's request. Making California a free state is going to ruin the balance between free and slave states. Southerners, once again, begin speaking about withdrawing from the Union. And let's back up and look back at this map. If we look at a map of the United States today, this line will cut right through California. California wants its entire state to join the Union as a free state. They don't want half of it free, half of it slave. So if we come back over here now, I mentioned withdrawing from the Union. We need to know that this is a vocabulary word for this unit. Withdrawing, we should know it means secession, the action of withdrawing from membership. Okay, and the way I want you guys to look at this, look at the Union as like a tree. But when they say they want to leave, they kind of want to cut their branch off and kind of develop their own tree. This is a great political cartoon that's kind of showing you a great illustration of this vocabulary word. And we see Union here, which is another vocabulary word. This represents United States. Okay, so Henry Clay, he's going to create the Compromise of 1850. California is going to enter as a free state. This is going to make the northern states happy. New Mexico and Utah will decide whether to allow slavery. This would please the South. They're going to use popular sovereignty. This is the idea that citizens of a region will vote to determine the outcome. So pretty much in Utah and New Mexico, they're voting on if the area is going to be a slave or free state. Okay, this makes the South happy. The slave trade would end in Washington, D.C. The slave trade is the idea of buying and selling slaves. So in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, you are still allowed to own slaves, but you cannot buy them or sell them. The final part of this compromise is the passage of a strong fugitive slave law. This would make it easier to find and reclaim runaway slaves. This is something the South wanted. The South wanted help capturing their runaway slaves. And I just want to point out, I think Henry Clay's smiling in that photo, and I just could not find a good photo of this man. Every photo I found of him, he just looks creepy and scary. So once again, let's recap everything. The Compromise of 1850. California is joining as a free state. Utah, New Mexico, these territories are going to turn to popular sovereignty. This is where the citizens of the region are going to vote to determine the outcome. So they're voting on the issue of slavery or free. Washington, D.C., there's going to be no more slave trade. You can still own a slave, you just can't buy or sell them in the capital. You have to leave the capital if you want to do that purchase or sale. And the final part of it is the fugitive slave law. With that being said, I covered everything about the Compromise of 1850. Please go to Google Classroom. There's a question posted there. And if you have questions, email me. And with that being said, have a great weekend.